Thank you. Welcome everybody to the meeting of the full Council of Herefordshire Council of the 26th of July. Before I formally start, can I make everybody aware that this meeting is being webcast and it is an official recording. Filming and photography is going to be permitted. If you do not wish to be filmed at any time, please can you alert us now? So we've got one there. Thank you, that's been taken note of. And I will remind members that contributions are timed and in accordance with the Constitution as laid out. Item 1 is matters of apologies. We have received apologies from Councillors Chowns, Heathfield, Purbury, Toynbee, Mason, Bramer and Councillor Robert Williams. So are there any other apologies? I don't think so. No other apologies. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest on any items on the agenda today? No, pretty straightforward. Colleagues, this is the first time that we have met since the passing of Councillor Bob Matthews. It's very strange for me as chairman to be sat here looking in that direction and not to see his cheerful face, ready, perplexed to question me, challenge me on some particular issue. It's been 26 years since I've worked with Bob on this authority. As is normal, I'm going to call upon representatives of each of the groups to take this time to pay tribute to our long-standing councillor, and I'll begin with his own group, the True Independents, and Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I only knew Bob for 4 years. However, in that short time, he became a friend and a teacher. It soon became evident that he was a man of the people. He was a selfless individual whose tireless efforts were felt by all who had the privilege of knowing him, whether in his private or political life. His ability to listen with empathy and understanding made him a good councillor. He gave his time generously to his parish councils as well as to his constituents. He had a strong disdain for waste, especially when it came to taxpayers' money. He believed deeply in getting value for every penny spent and was meticulous in ensuring that resources were used wisely. He valued order and discipline and held himself to a high standard and expected the same from others. His direct approach in dealing with officers and colleagues alike was a testament to his integrity and straightforward nature. More often than not, he showed impatience in meetings, often tapping his fingers on the table through frustration and time wasting, in his opinion. These moments only underscore his passion and dedication to his work. Bob was a character, a man whose presence and principles will be greatly missed. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Davis for those very kind words about Bob. It's spot on. So, I reflect on the fact that he really showed true grit and determination and really fought for what he believed in. He never faltered in wanting the best for his constituents and for everyone in Herefordshire. He wanted to get things right, and he was persistent and dogged in his determination to worry about the finances. He always had a cheeky smile because I think that was his way of being mindful about how challenging things could be. Bob set as an example to us all about how to serve as a councillor, and it's true to say that this chamber won't be the same without him. We will all miss him, and when we reflect on the fact that he gave so much of his life to public service, he was his achievement in that regard it'll be very difficult to match that, and as I say, we will miss him dearly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Bob was a rather special person in the sense that you cannot imagine anybody quite like him. In my life in local government, I don't remember anybody quite like him. That sometimes was a good thing and sometimes a bad thing, but he was a character in many respects. He started life from relatively humble beginnings in life, and like all his family, they were hardworking, industrious, and successful in whatever they did. And he came from a large family near Letton, and was brought up having to walk to school, and he did national service. He then worked as a salesman for an agricultural machinery firm. He then joined the police and did 30 years, and he's done just over 30 years as a councillor. So he's lived a full and active life, right up to the end. And the one thing that people asked, what age was he? When you said 87, most people couldn't believe it, that he remained so active. Even I didn't think about him being 87. He always seemed sort of 70-ish or something like that, even at the end of his life. He lived a full and active life right up to the end. And I spoke to him the night before he died on the telephone. And I shall miss coming home at night and my wife saying, Bob's been on the phone. And those of you who had that know what that experience was. He was very, very, very... What I also recall about him is when he used to get angry in a meeting and was quite, not aggressive is the word, but towards an individual. And then he realised perhaps I've been a bit too strong, and he started to back away and be to the opposite end of the spectrum of concern. Yes, as I say, he was a unique individual, and as I say, none of us are like him. And perhaps that's a good thing in some respects, and some of us, will miss his ability. And there are always people who say what a lot of people are thinking, but are too embarrassed to actually say it. And he did that, and he'll be missed in local government.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bob Matthews was one of the first councillors to welcome me to Herefordshire Council after the elections last May. Then promptly at our next meeting, tried to persuade me to join the independent group. I really admired that steadfast belief and commitment to political independence. Bob really cared about people, Herefordshire and local democracy. As a group, the Greens valued his long experience in local politics and his experience before that in public service. The changes that Herefordshire Council have seen will really miss that long corporate memory. But most of all, I think we'll miss Bob's mischievous sense of humour, and particularly his dapper dress and rose buttonhole. Ellie wore a buttonhole in tribute at his packed funeral. The council, as you've said, is frankly not the same without him. And again, as with Roger, I very much miss seeing his face sitting here, sandwiched between Claire and Jackie. We really will miss him. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Matthews was a larger-than-life character who dedicated his life to public service. His championing of independence in local politics has been instrumental in Herefordshire becoming known as a leader in the national movement. A great champion for his communities of Credenhill and Brainton, Bob was a strong and consistent advocate for a second city bridge in Hereford. His passion and challenge in council and in committee meetings will be greatly missed by us all.
Thank you. Council, would you please be standing for a moment's reflection? We now return to the business of the meeting, and we begin with the minutes that are there before you on pages 11 to 18. Is it your wish that these minutes are a true agreement of the meeting that was held on the 24th of May? All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. No concerns. Thank you. We'll then move on to the next item, item 4, which is the agenda item of the Chairman and Chief Executive's announcements. Under my own announcements, of course, since the last council meeting, we have had a general election. And I think all of us as councillors, first of all, can take very great pride and inform our communities and remind them that we are fortunate to live in a country in this world where you will change your political leader or your political leadership by going into a room and making a secret ballot without fear or favour. So many places in the world that can only be done by riot, revolution, by violence and killings. And I think we do just need to have a moment's reflection to say that the change happens in Downing Street by a furniture van coming in and out rather than everything else. And that actually is quite a serious statement when you think about the rest of the world that we live in. In particular, I think as I am very proud of local government, we had 3 of our councillors who stood as parliamentary candidates, and I congratulate all 3 of them on that wonderful experience, and I hope that they enjoyed that one. Of course, in particular, Councillor Ellie Chowns, who can't be with us today because she's on parliamentary business, I'll have you believe, because they're sitting on a Friday, most unusually. But our congratulations go to her. It is, I think, something, whatever your political opinion is, to have someone who has done their apprenticeship in local government to go on to the next level is very important. And I know I've worked with many Labour colleagues over the past few years who have now gone into Parliament. I hope, and it is for us, never to let them forget where they came from, and I'm sure they won't. But it is, I think, important that those people that pontificate up in Westminster understand that here at the grassroots we deliver the services, and those people, the more people we can have there who understood what it's like on the ground, the better. So our congratulations to Ellie, and we look forward to working with her and, of course, continues working with Jessie Norman for the benefit of our county. The only other amendment is, it says there under Bob that he was a caring politician. I actually used the word canny, which, but the officers obviously thought that I meant caring, but I think most of you will agree that he was a canny politician. So there we are. Chief Executive, is there anything you need to add to your report?
There is, Chairman, just one item of update, and I think I wanted to share this with members. They may have heard it from other quarters, but midway through last week, we received a letter from the new Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, Angela Rayner. In her letter, she was inviting local authorities who don't have a devolution deal in place to work with the new government to develop a deal for their areas. Government have asked that expressions of interest are received from local authorities who do have an interest by the end of September. We are expecting further information to follow, along with discussions with government officials during August, to help us to better understand the devolution framework and the powers and flexibilities to areas who may well want to enter into a devolution agreement. Clearly, this is an important matter for the Council, excuse me, and one where further discussion over the coming weeks and months, as we learn more about the devolution opportunities for Herefordshire, would be important. We will be arranging further briefings with members and discussions to allow that to happen as we learn more and bring the opportunities together for Herefordshire through a devolution agreement and get some clear indication of how far we wish to proceed with this opportunity and any discussions with government that would follow from there. So it's for information at the moment, to alert you to this. We've received the invitation to join in some discussions with government. We've yet to kind of hear more and learn more. Once we do, then that'll form the basis of ongoing discussions with members across the council and work through what that means for Herefordshire, so we can take the opportunities if that's right for Herefordshire at the time. Thank you, Chairman.
Yep. Thank you, Chief Executive, and we'll keep a close eye on that development. We now move on to the next item, which is questions from members of the public. These questions have been circulated before, and the opportunity for supplementaries. The first question from Mr. Gibson on highway investment. I understand there is no supplementary. That is correct. The next question is Mr. Whiteleg and I understand there is a supplementary, but he's not in attendance, so that will be read out.
Thank you, Chair. The supplementary is, please will the Council display timetable information as soon as possible in locations near to the town centre bus stops, and in addition to the problematic bus shelter location. There are two possibilities. One, the town centre newsagent, Ledbury News, 3 High Street, Ledbury. 2, the display case for public notices on the railings next to the bus shelter. Thank you.
And the reply from the Cabinet Member?
Yes, thank you to Mr Whiteleg for his question and supplementary. And I will just refer him back to the answer in the original question and the last paragraph where it says, at the present time we are in discussion with manufacturers but have yet to find a suitable alternative. In the meantime, 2 new timetable cases will be installed at the stops in the coming weeks. It's quite a complicated issue due to vandalism, etc. But that's as far as I can update you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is Mr Fisher regarding footpath closure. And we don't know whether there's been a supplementary,
No,
and
there
Mr
hasn't.
Fisher is not present. So
No.
we'll move on to Ms Moraleska on rail investment. We don't know if there's a supplementary. Oh, Mr, sorry, yes, Mr Walla-Valencia.
No.
No, there's no supplementary. Mrs Walla-Leska,
Yes, there is.
there is a supplementary and that will be read out.
Thank you. The City Link Road incurred additional land costs of at least 5.115 million, which were originally budgeted at 11.135, and which have so far cost 16.250 million, an increase of 46% on budget. This is more than the 5 million the Council are currently setting aside to tackle homelessness in the county, surely a higher priority than building for cars. How is the administration planning to cover this inevitable budget overrun costs on the South Wide Transport Package and other unfunded road schemes? Thank you.
Councillor Price?
Yes, thank you, and thank you to Mrs Morivieska for a supplementary question. The decision to recommence the work on phase 1 of the Western bypass was made by Cabinet on the 28th of March 2024. The full report can be found online. At present, the Cabinet has committed £10.3 million of capital funding to progress with phase 1 of the bypass and has allocated £760,000 of revenue funding to enable works for phase 2 of the project. In the same report, an estimate for the delivery of phase 1 indicates that the total cost of delivery will be in the range 31 million to 35 million. Discussions are ongoing with Midlands Connect and the Department for Transport to determine the most appropriate method of funding. Estimates are based on current awareness of typical costs of schemes of this nature, and a range of inflation figures have been accounted for. The range of estimates has included for optimism bias, and the budget is currently considered to be sufficient to allow for the successful completion of the scheme. It should be remembered that the Cabinet does not look at budgets in isolation, but across the full breadth of services that the Council is responsible for. Every decision that is made is viewed in the round, balancing the needs of all that are impacted as a consequence. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Mrs Prothero, and I understand a supplementary is to be read.
Thank you. If capital funds of 10 million are allocated for developing new road schemes, what capital funding has been allocated by the Cabinet to invest in delivering business cases for new rail and bus stations and integrating these types of transport with safe, active travel measures? Thank you.
Councillor Price?
Yes, thank you for the supplementary question, Mr Prothero. Before capital funding is committed to any scheme, a robust business case needs to be developed. At this early stage, the Council uses revenue funding, and £50,000 has been allocated by the Council to develop the Strategic Outline Business Case, the SOBC, for a new rail station at Pontrilas. This project is known as the Golden Valley Parkway. The SOBC is the earliest assessment of the viability of a scheme. Should there be a strong case to develop the station further, an outline business case will be produced in greater detail, followed by a full business case. Demonstrating a strong business case will be essential if capital funding, likely to be from the Department of Transport, is to be forthcoming. It is also necessary to show a positive financial model for the train operating company, Transport for Wales. If the SOBC can demonstrate a positive case for the station, then the design would be further developed, which will include access and active travel measures. The Council is also delivering a new transport hub, Hereford Transport Hub, at a cost of £9.828 million. It is expected that construction will start by December 2024 and take around 12 months to build. The hub is a modern integrated transport exchange that will increase bus facilities in the city and enable passengers to switch easily between different modes of transport. Improvements to the public realm around the station will create better walking, cycling and bus infrastructure and increase the choice of travel options. We are also investing in the new Business Service Improvement Partnership, known as BSIP, funds of around £1 million a year for the next 3 years in supporting and enhancing existing bus services in the county, including the market towns. Thank you.
Thank you. And next question is from Ms. Martin. I'm not sure whether there's a supplementary or not. I don't think there is. Very well, we'll move on to question 8, which is from Mr. Browning, regarding children's improvements. Again, we don't think there's a supplementary. Number 9, section 47, inquiry, Mr. McGowan. And is he not present?
No.
No, there is no supplementary.
No, there is.
There is a supplementary, which will be read out.
Yes. Thank you. I believe your answer illustrates the problem perfectly. You state, with the support of legal advice, and might be at risk of significant harm. Additionally contained in section 47 notice letters, where there is a reason to believe the children could be at risk of significant harm, the section 47 inquiry takes place. I assume this is a standard council copy and paste text. Would it be a good idea for Council's legal department to provide instruction to social workers of all ranks so that they can understand the significant legal difference between reasonable cause to suspect and likely to suffer significant harm compared to the vaguer reason to believe and might be at risk, could be at risk of significant harm? Wouldn't such instruction enable better understanding of when to seek the support of legal advice for satisfying thresholds? Thank you.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. So my apologies for any confusion in using different language in the initial response. The term reasonable cause and likely to suffer significant harm are the words that are used, and the staff are trained in that. So this isn't a difference in meaning, it was simply a difference in language use, so my apologies. Thank you.
Question 10 is from Mrs. McGowan regarding section 47 inquiry. Is there a supplementary?
Yes, there is.
There is, so that will be read.
I believe your answer illustrates the problem perfectly. Working together in guidance published in the 22nd of March 2015, 26th of March 2015, it provides protocols for best practice when using statutory legislation. There may be no specific requirement in December 2023 update to compile a list local solicitors, as such Herefordshire Safeguarding Children Partnership does not. But you do have such a list. It is available through Tri-X, your leading partner in online social care procedures. I have a very smart 4-page print with Herefordshire Council logo, in quotes, Law Society Children Panel Solicitors, Herefordshire and Worcestershire. You can get the PDF. Why withhold providing this list even when formally requested? Is it because the Council wished to prevent empowering, loving families of good standing, protecting their right for private and family life, Article 8, the European Convention on Human Rights? Thank you.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the follow-up question. For clarity, Herefordshire's Safeguarding Children Partnership, formerly known as the Children's Board, is a separate entity to Herefordshire Council, although, of course, Herefordshire Council are part of that partnership. The response given was in relation to the role of the safeguarding partnerships, and to quote from the question, safeguarding boards should conduct a trawl. And that the response to that particular question is correct. The partnership is not responsible for all of its partners' own procedures and publications. As you have identified, Herefordshire Council does hold a list of local solicitors. There was no intention to withhold this information, but the response was simply replying to the question regarding the responsibilities of Herefordshire's Children's Safeguarding Partnership.
Thank you. I understand Mr. Browning unfortunately was late arriving, but he is now here and will ask his supplementary. Mr. Browning.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you, Chair. If I could ask how long I have.
Sorry?
How long do I have?
1 minute.
Do I have a few seconds to introduce myself ahead of that?
Well, you have 1 minute. You start now.
My name is John Browning. Thank you very much, everyone, for being able to take this question. I was recently the candidate in the parliamentary elections for Labour. Just like to congratulate right now Eddie Chan for a really good securing of her seat in Parliament as MP. The previous question was on children's services. Supplementary to that, I'll follow up with. Sorry, I'm out of breath trying to get him. There's still a few issues that we can see, and certainly there's a lot around accountability which the families feel needs to be addressed. One way forward might be to have a group, a working style group, where there's counsellors who are appropriate involved and stakeholders from the, not from the individual cases, but who represent the public and those who are interested and have already been advocating for families. And I think such a thing should be discussed, and that group can invite councillors to join and have a discussion on how to make progress on some of the issues we know exist. The question is, are the councillors here willing to, on the Hereford Times article that talked about cross-party wishes for a public inquiry, are they willing to support that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. There are a number of issues raised in that particular question, and given the complexity of the current position, I think it would be more appropriate for me to provide a detailed response in writing.
Yes, that sounds eminently sensible to me. Thank you. Question 11 is from Miss Albright. I can't see her here, so I don't think there is a supplementary. And finally, Mr. Milne. Mr. Milne, sorry.
It looks like it's here, yes.
And Mr. Milne is here, so he is going to read out his supplementary. Mr. Milne.
As though it were not enough for the council to mark its own homework, here apparently the dog ate it. Of course, the truth is there is no homework. There is no quote-unquote material start to the Southern Link Road, such as is required to preserve the planning permission. Where we had been told by its so-called New Roads strategy that there is a 150-metre completed section of the Southern Link Road, there is a fine crop of potatoes. Nothing else, just potatoes. Will the Cabinet member ensure that his New Roads strategy report is corrected at paragraph 50 so that it tells the truth? It simply cannot say there is a 150-metre completed section of the Southern Link Road when this is plainly false.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
I have absolutely no answer written down in front of me, so this is going to be as I see it. I'm sorry that Mr. Milne thinks there is no homework, because when we looked at this question over the last days, the officers concerned were completely baffled as to what the subject matter here was. So I have been told that there is the potential for a photograph to be put up on the screen this morning. I don't know whether technically we can do that or not. If we can, could we please do it? Because there is many photographs. This is the start. This is the start of the SLR in July 2019. There is a great layer of stone that has been put along that section, as you can see. It's been compacted down, and it cannot be seen in any other way as the start of building a road. There are many, many documents regarding this that is absolutely our homework, and the dog didn't eat it, from actual reports back to say that the discharge of the commencement of development has actually happened. We have emails backwards and forwards and lots of detailed comments from the planning officer, Kelly Gibbons, who actually visited the site on 2 occasions to see the work going ahead, and the conditions of commencement have been met. And in planning rules and laws, and it's not marking our own homework, this is planning laws, this is sufficient to start the project. In February 2021, the previous administration, of which Mr. Milne was party to, had an extraordinary meeting where the project was cancelled. And I have to say that of the 52 members on that meeting, all of which were present, an electronic vote was had, and you needed 27 votes to be able to get a majority of 1. And there was 27 votes in favour. So that means, in my language, that every councillor that voted against collectively and individually cancelled this scheme, and I would hold every single one of those councillors that cancelled it personally responsible for the additional cost of over £20 million that cost this council for the cancellation of this project. I could go on and on and on. But the dog did not eat the homework, and we refute that this is not correct, what you're saying.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Yes. The picture paints 1,000 words, so hopefully that saved us some time. Very well. That concludes the questions from the public. We'll go on to agenda item 6, which is questions from members of council. Council, there are no questions being submitted.
Point of order, Chairman, if I may.
Who's that? Oh, Councillor Hitchener.
Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with the Constitution. I'm terribly concerned that I, amongst others, have been threatened now with personal liability for several £1 million, and I wonder whether the monitoring officer might comment on that comment from Councillor Price. Thank you.
Yeah, she'll get back to you, but she doesn't seem that. She doesn't view it as that, but she will get back to you formally. Very well. So moving on to agenda item 7 then. This is the addition of to the capital budget to provide an acquisition fund for housing provision. It is outlined on pages 25 to 32. It is to approve the addition of 5 million in the capital budget to enable the delivery of the housing provision. You will find that report, as I say, from pages 25, and I'll call on the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services, Councillor Stollard, to propose the motion. Councillor Stollard.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal before you today seeks Council's approval of an additional £5 million to the capital programme to enable delivery of housing provision. As part of this administration's housing strategy, which will be delivered this autumn, we will provide an element of affordable housing. This report is part of that initiative and seeks to embrace the vision as contained in the Council plan of delivering the best for Herefordshire in everything that we do. It is clearly aligned with the place theme in the Council plan, where we have stated we will support the right housing in the right place, and furthermore, a stated objective within the delivery plan for 24-25, under the growth theme on page 12, is to secure accommodation for vulnerable people at risk of homelessness. It also supports our Herefordshire Homelessness Prevention and Rough Sleeping Strategy 2020-2025, which itself is aligned with central government's policy in the Homelessness Reduction Act of 2017 and its focus on prevention, intervention and recovery. These statutory obligations, therefore, impose a resource and financial burden on Herefordshire Council that has increased by almost 100% over the last 2 years. In 2023-24, Housing Solutions spent £3,415,832.27 on temporary accommodation, which was comprised of £3,030,030.55 on Travel Lodge bed and breakfast style accommodation and £385,801.72 on private sector rental accommodation. This £5 million will establish a fund which will enable Herefordshire Council to respond to opportunities to acquire and develop further housing provision to meet this demand and to decrease the costs spent on temporary accommodation. The capital programme was approved by full council in February 2024, and following the budget and policy framework, this report now proposes in-year changes to the approved programme. The addition of this £5 million to the capital programme is to enable the Cabinet to take decisions when properties or land become available and not to miss out on opportunities to deliver suitable, affordable housing. The £5 million has been added on the basis that any rental income will cover the running cost and provide a surplus to repay the cost of borrowing over the useful life of the asset. Homes England grants will also be applied where possible to reduce the overall borrowing costs and be added to the capital programme by the S151 delegated powers. I would like to emphasise that inclusion in the capital programme is not approval to proceed. Each project will be subject to its own governance, and a full business case will be presented for approval where required and in full compliance with Herefordshire Council's contract procedure rules as applicable. The capital programme supports the delivery plan and the individual service delivery strategies that are in place. The aim of capital expenditure is to benefit the community through improved facilities and by promoting economic growth. As I mentioned earlier, a direct stated objective within the delivery plan for 24-25 under the growth theme on page 12 is to secure accommodation for vulnerable people at risk of homelessness. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind Council that the development of any project within the delivery plan 24-25 will seek to minimise any adverse environmental impact and also to identify opportunities to improve and enhance environmental performance. The proposed addition of £5 million to the capital programme is on the basis that any borrowing requirement will be funded from surplus income. Therefore, there are no financial implications for the revenue budget by this addition to the capital programme. In conclusion, this report seeks to address the challenge of homelessness within Herefordshire by establishing a fund to enable us to respond to acquire and develop our housing provision to address this significant issue. I strongly endorse this proposal of the Council and for its approval of its single recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stoller. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Lester. Very well. Do you wish to speak now or later?
Later if necessary, Chair.
If necessary. Fairly straightforward. I know this has been to Cabinet and was supported by all political groups. Whether there is anybody else that wants to add to this at this moment in time. Councillor Tillett.
Thank you, Chair. Council will be familiar with one of my recurring themes of the difficulty for ward members to get responses and accountability for much of the social housing across the county, which is held predominantly by independent housing associations. Now, this is rather jumping the gun, but I think it would be useful to understand that in the event of the council purchasing future accommodation, what thought has been given to how this will be managed? Will it be managed directly by the council? Will, perish the thought, it be handed over to some of our housing associations to run, or perhaps in light of the success, for instance, of the winter rough sleeping programme, over to a local charity such as CCP? Just what thoughts, if any, have there been at this stage? Thank you.
Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you.
Can I remind everybody, this is not about a question and answer session. This is about making statements as a part of the resolution. So just within that context. Very well. Councillor Bartlett.
Yeah, I do support the addition of this to the capital budget for the housing provision finance by taking on Public Works loan. And I do note, actually, that many councils across England, the bill for temporary emergency bed and breakfast accommodation is fast becoming one of the biggest financial pressures that we face. And indeed, an LGA quoted article in The Independent this week has put the total all councils' cost at 1.6 billion for temporary accommodation. And as the report notes, at £90 a night for the hotel room, you can see how that could quickly add up. But I have to say, I would like to understand whether or not the leader might commit wherever possible. If we are building stuff, you know, can we use our own land and brownfield land first for new build? And can we bring empty properties back into habitable use before buying accommodation that is already fit for purpose on the open market, bearing in mind that would then put us into competition with our residents for what affordable homes there are. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just add, I've got Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Proctor, then Councillor Stark, then Councillor Kenyon at the moment in time, then Councillor Hercombe. Wait a minute, I've got you. I'll stop there because otherwise we'll run out. Okay, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome this addition to the capital programme. Homelessness is a serious and deeply damaging issue with long-standing physical and emotional consequences for those unlucky enough to experience it. However, it is the consequence of a wider failure to address the local affordable housing crisis. As such, I am disappointed by the poverty of ambition represented by this investment when this minority administration has removed the £100 million investment line inserted by the independent-led administration, which was aimed at addressing the wider housing crisis rather than dealing only with its worst consequences. Our investment took a similar self-funding approach and had a similar high-level and enabling business case. The only conclusion I can draw is that it was not invented here. Whilst undertaking work to build projects forward, we made strong progress whilst in administration in delivering the development of 100% affordable housing developments, working with housing associations and the Homes and Communities Agency, both at Cleehonga and at Ledbury. And those, I think, are exemplar examples of how working with housing associations we can, as a council, enable affordable houses to come forward without necessarily spending any council money to make that happen, just by using the levers that we have to pull on. So we do support this as an addition to the programme, but it's just too little and we need to do more.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Proctor, Stark, Kenyon, Harcombe, Crockett and James. Councillor Proctor next.
Yes, I mean, as other members have said, this is obviously a good thing that will be a benefit to the county. I'm a little frustrated that on the one hand, the proposal talks about £5 million in the capital programme, and on the other hand it talks about a current £3.5 million revenue spend, but it doesn't link those two together. So it's unclear why 5 million is the right number or what the impact will be on that revenue line. And obviously the detail of that will depend on individual property purchases, but I imagine some work was done to come up with the figure of £5 million, and it would just be helpful to have a better understanding of what we think we'll get if we spend £5 million of capital in terms of a reduction in the revenue cost.
Thank you. Councillor Stark.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this initiative as a start in the right direction, but we need to look at the causes of homelessness and the causes of the standard of housing provision across the county. I mean, if you look at the private sector, I'm sure many of us know of tenants who are living in substandard accommodation even now. And what I'm concerned about is we need a strategic approach in terms of housing provision across the county, and we need to have a clear statement from this administration what this strategic approach is. This is a piecemeal approach aimed at homelessness, and I do welcome it, but I do worry that it's not actually set in the context of a strategic approach to deal with not only homelessness, but issues we might have with accommodation problems with housing associations and with private landlords as well, and how we are going to react to the sorts of pressures that come about from those that are in substandard accommodation, needing the council to step forward and help them in actually getting into better accommodation. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stark. Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, not being part of this minority administration, I can say they're doing far better than the last one, and I think continually mention it by Councillor Harvey is just ridiculous. Anyway, I'm a businessman. this council is a business. If it's run as a business, that's what it should be, run as a business. And by allowing this money and putting that into a fund, we'll be able to get the right property at the right time, because that's what businesses do. They snap up opportunity, and this is going to give this council an opportunity to snap up all these opportunities. So this is a sound business move. I'm fully supportive.
Thank you. Councillor Hurcombe?
Thank you, Chair. I would agree with Councillor Bartlett's statement on empty properties and the need to get these back into use as part of the plan to reduce the overall need for temporary accommodation. To this end, I'd like to draw my colleagues' attention to the work of the Housing Development Team, who, if informed of empty properties, will work with other departments across the council to trace the owners and see what can be done to bring these properties back into use. That was a fact I recently discovered at the Parish Council Summit, actually, and it was incredibly useful to hear the work of that team. I'd urge colleagues who are aware of empty properties in their wards to refer these to Housing Development Team for consideration, and also to the Revenue and Benefits Team. A property that is empty for 1 to 5 years attracts a 200% council tax premium, and it's only right that those properties are classed as empty and the tax is applied, and hopefully the high level of tax will also bring them back into use.
Thank you. Councillor Crockett?
Thank you, Chair. I completely support this presentation here today. As the previous Cabinet Member for Adults Wellbeing and Social Care, I was involved in many decisions to get approved for properties, etc., for our needy residents. One of the issues that we had, and I stand corrected if anybody can tell me, was that there wasn't enough property out there. It wasn't that we didn't have the money or the officer ability to push that forward. It was simply they couldn't get the properties. The Housing Solutions team worked relentlessly to get what we did get, and if we look back at previous meetings, it identifies all the good work that the previous administration did do and did achieve. So just in key consideration number 4, I take a bit of umbrage to say and not miss out on opportunities to deliver suitable housing, because the opportunity was there, we had the money there, it was just the timing to get it done.
Thank you. I've got Councillor James and Biggs, and then I propose to bring in Councillor Lester and then wind up the debate, if that's okay. Councillor James, then Councillor Biggs.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we wholeheartedly support this particular proposal, limited as it is. And that's the point. I would remind some of the members opposite, that if we hadn't cancelled the Link Road, we might have been able to have afforded 5 times as much money for homelessness. Anyway, but people harking back to what was is pointless at this particular point in the juncture. Just to say that this is, I hope, stage 1 of a number of projects in order to facilitate the reduction in the homelessness in this county, which is large. I mean, I've dealt with numbers of families who are living in appalling accommodation in hotel rooms, five to a room. And so I hope we can get on with this. I'm not quite sure how it was just been said that there was no housing available in the last 5 years. I'm not quite sure how that is. Housing is always available. The cost is the price.
Thank you. Councillor Biggs.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate and I welcome the support from across the parties on this. It's fabulous we can come together and frankly depoliticise something that's so important to us. It's got to be important to us all, and we shouldn't be having or trying to score points on it. So I'm really pleased we're all together on it. And just to be really clear, there's a tender out at the moment, or that tender's been returned to have best practice. What we've commissioned is a best practice review on affordable housing. That's coming back in. That'll be seen by scrutiny. That'll come into committee and it'll come to a cross-party working group. When that's in, we'll have a much better view, and that'll be shared with the whole council, and hopefully we can take all members on a similar train with us to that side of things. This is the fund we identified. There's clearly a need. This will give us the nimbleness to be able to respond to that need should the opportunities arise, and that's all it is. So we can look at it as token gesture if we choose, but right now it's a pretty decent token gesture in moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lester, did you wish to second now?
Yes, I'll second it. But just to sum up, thank you to Councillor Biggs for highlighting that the desire to have a strategic approach about housing, affordable housing for temporary accommodation. That's got to be part of a wider strategy, and we will mention it when we talk about the leaders' report. But there is a company that's being commissioned to ensure that we have a strategic approach to housing delivery, best practice, and delivery models. So when we're talking about who should run the housing, how should it be run, what type of housing we should have, we will have a strategic approach to that. And that will answer all of the questions that councillors have. But we're not there yet. We're going to form that strategy, and it will be, as Councillor Biggs says, part of scrutiny and part of the working group to ensure that the council gets it right, because we may disagree about the detail, but we're all in agreement that we must have suitable housing for people who need it as and when. And this opportunity to allocate that funding will enable us to move quickly if and when we have the right appropriate scheme forward to make sure that we address a housing need. So I'm fully supportive of this capital allocation. I thank everybody for their comments, and I think as a whole council we can work together in ensuring that we delivering the best we can on this matter. So happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Stoller, do you want to sum up? No, thank you. We've debated this matter. The resolution is on page 9 of, well, it's on page 9 of mine agenda anyway, is before you to approve the addition of 5 million to the capital programme for housing provision. I intend to take a hand vote on this. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. If you put your hands down, any against or no, that's unanimous. Thank you all very much. We move on then to agenda item 8. This is the statement of gambling licence policy for 2024 to 2027. I would remind Council that this is one of our statutory duties as a local authority. The papers are before you from pages 33 to 144, and I will call upon the Cabinet Member for our regulatory services, Councillor Durkin, to move the recommendation. Councillor Durkin.
Thank you, Chairman. When the Gambling Act 2005 came to force in late 2007, it brought a new comprehensive system for gambling regulation in Great Britain. For the first time, the vast majority of commercial gambling was brought together in a single regulatory framework. The Act established a dedicated regulator at a national level in the form of the Gambling Commission. But it has also recognised the potential local impact and importance of gambling. So it created many local regulators for whose job was to manage gambling locally in line with local circumstances. For Herefordshire, this is the licensing authority, who are in fact Herefordshire Council. The Act also provides scope for the Commission to act to set an overall direction at a national level, whilst leaving licensing authorities in the lead locally with appropriate support from the Commission. Licensing authorities are responsible for local gambling regulation, and the Act gives us responsibility for a number of regulatory functions in relation to gambling activities. These include issuing a statement of licensing policy, which you have got before you, the policy statement, setting expectations about how gambling will be regulated in the area, responsibility for licensing gambling premises, among other things. The Act requires all licensing authorities to prepare and publish a statement of licensing principles that they propose to apply in exercising their functions under the Act, commonly known as a policy statement. The policy statement forms the licensing authority's mandate for managing local gambling provision and sets out how the licensing authority views the local risk environment and therefore its expectations in relation to operators with premises in the locality. The policy statement acts as the primary vehicle for setting out the licensing authority's approach to regulating how the local circumstances are. This is the sixth statement for licensing policy introduced by the Council. This has been reviewed and has been amended where appropriate, and the review has been wide-ranging. A majority of these changes have been brought about following the Gambling Commission updating their guidance to local authorities, whose changes are summarised in an appendix. As you can see from the report, it has undergone an extensive statutory consultation process. The policy is fit for purpose and has undergone the statutory process. I therefore recommend its approval to the Council today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Thomas. You want to speak now or later?
I think, Mr. Chairman, this is something, it is statutory. We have to do it, and there's very little that we need to debate about this. It's all been done. So I'm very happy to second this motion.
Thank you. Very well. Does anyone else want to speak on this particular item? Councillor Stark.
Obviously, we have to accept the gambling policy legislation and guidance we get nationally, but I would just like to point out that in Ross, in one street, we've got 3 bookmakers almost cheat by jowl. Now, I don't know whether that has happened just by default, but that's something I would like to have avoided as a county councillor in Ross, because it means you have a concentration of bookmakers that are unavoidable and can be seen and can be used to attract people to gamble when perhaps they should not be. So we have to accept the policy, but I'm just a bit surprised that it's allowed that sort of scenario to develop in Ross. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Harvey, is anybody else? If there's, and Councillor Simmons. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I welcome the updating of this, and it is a statutory responsibility, and therefore important that we discharge it. I did stub my brain a little bit on paragraph 12 of the covering report, where it states that the policy will help to promote the life chances of looked after children or care leavers. I'm struggling to see how it does that other than through the provision that it offers in terms of the Gambling Act's responsibility to protect all children. However, it's actually very more often the case that gambling causes damage to children and families through the opportunity that it offers to their parents and to adults in their surroundings to gamble, and also to gamble in conjunction with consuming alcohol amongst other stimulants. This policy does nothing to remove the opportunity for gambling devices to be located in drinking establishments. So that may be beyond the scope of what we're able to do, but I'd welcome any clarification from Cabinet members as to why this is specifically going to address assisting and protecting looked after children and care leavers.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons, and then I'll go back to Councillor Durkin.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the revisions and updates to the policy, especially within Appendix 3, outlining where the changes have been made. It's clear that the team have given clear thought to how they can control gambling within what is permitted within law, especially explicit requirements in relation to protecting children and young people. And particularly in the local risk assessment at 10.4, it's clear that thought has been given to how perhaps, with Councillor Stark's concerns about locations within particular areas and the general context and demographics of the area could be used to look at that risk assessment and hopefully address some of those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Durkin, did you want to sum up before we go to the vote?
Yes, please, Chairman. The gambling machines are not permitted in alcohol premises because they're only fruit machines, which are not considered to be gambling machines as such. I believe they're, if I understand it correctly, they are considered recreational. However, I understand what the aspects being said. If it does not cover this within the actual information and requirement from the Gambling Commission, it's regarding how we deal with it in our local area based on what they are looking at as a national body. So with regard to the number of betting shops in the street, I'm afraid that is governed by local forces. There is nothing to say that it can't happen. You can have every single street covered like this, but that's national, doesn't cover national policy. It's about local forces. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Very well. I'll now move to the recommendation. I propose to take a hand vote. The recommendation is that the draft policy at Appendix 1 be approved. All those in favour? I'm pretty sure that's unanimous. Thank you. Anyone against? No, that is unanimous. Thank you all very much. We'll then move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the designation, item 9, the designation of the Section 151 officer and salary for the Director of the Finance post. I'll call upon Councillor Lester as Chairman of the Employment Panel to move the recommendation. Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Chair. There are two recommendations for the Council to consider. The first recommendation is for the Council to consider the salary for the post of the Director of Finance. The Director of Finance is a new post, and after conducting an evaluation exercise with external support, the recommended salary for the post of Director of Finance is £104,583. The recommended salary takes into account that the Section 151 responsibilities, market position, and the Council's grading structure. This is because the Director of Finance is a new post which isn't already included in the pay policy statement, and the recommendation is above £100,000. The salary must be approved by full Council. Employment Panel met on the 18th of July and agreed the recommendation of the salary so that we would put that forward to full Council. The second recommendation is the designation of the Section 151 officer responsibility. The Section 151 officer is a statutory designation which is prescribed in law. Section 151 of the Local Government Act 1972 states that all councils must designate a post as a Section 151 officer. That officer will ensure the proper administration of the council's financial affairs, maintain strong financial management, lead and manage an effective financial service. The post holder must be a qualified member of a recognised accounting body and will ordinarily lead and manage the financial function of the council. Following a restructure at the senior leadership team level, the Chief Executive has created a new post of Director of Finance. The newly created Director of Finance post will be in the best position to undertake the 151 officer responsibilities. And again, the Employment Panel met on the 18th of July and agreed the recommendation to Council that the Director of Finance is the most appropriate post to designate the responsibilities of the Section 151 officer, and so I would like to move the recommendation.
Thank you, and I'll call upon the Vice Chairman of the Employment Panel, Councillor Simmons. Well, the Acting Vice Chairman.
Sorry. Yes,
Very well. As you know, the 151 officer and the monitoring officer have a particularly high responsibility with regard to the democratic processes and financial procedures of the council. So this matter has to be discussed and ratified by the full council. I assume, can we go straight to the vote? Is everyone content with that? Sorry. Councillor Hitchener.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to commend the previous Section 151 officer, his amazing efforts over the years. A very good officer, very committed to public service, so thank you for his work. There's the golden triangle referred to of the Chief Executive, the monitoring officer, and the Section 151 officer. The previous Section 151 officer had a very strong presence across the whole council, was dealing with project management and many other issues, and so within that golden triangle there was a concentration of knowledge and experience in decision making. With this new structure, there's potential that that golden triangle will be a little bit less influential, a little bit not as strong as it perhaps might be. I'd be interested to hear the leader's view, or whoever else might want to express a view as to how we can ensure that that relationship is really strong for the benefit of the council going forward. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no one else to speak, Councillor Lester, did you want to reply to that or not? No.
Well, I thank Councillor Hitchener for the point that's made, and the relationship between the Section 151 officer, the monitoring officer, and the Chief Executive is a critical relationship to ensure the functioning of the council. You know, I have no doubt in my mind that that robust relationship will be maintained where you have an officer that is solely focused on the financial direction of the council, rather than the other roles and responsibilities that the previous officer had to also embrace. So I think this is a position that will strengthen that relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, as I said, it's a legal requirement for all local authorities. So the recommendation is that the salary of the new role of Director of Finance is set at £104,583, and the Director of Finance role is designated as the statutory 151 officer. All those in favour? Thank you. I think that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Members of Council, I'm now proposing that we have a short break before we take the final item. So can I ask for the recording to cease, please? To begin again, please. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We now come to agenda item 10, which is the leaders' report, which is on pages 151 to 172. I'll call upon the leaders' report as we will go through the various items initially on the first page, which begins, and they're laid out according to the theme of the Council's plan. And we'll begin with the first item, which is Children's Services and Improvement Update. Do we have any questions for the leader on that particular matter, please? If we have no questions on that, I'll move on then. Sorry. Oh, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. On children's services, there's an increasing trend for a number of children to not attend school. Parents keep or withdrawing young children from school for various reasons since the COVID report. Are there any plans to help schools overcome these problems?
Are you going to answer that or? Yeah, okay.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Oliver. There is a department within the council that tackles these issues of attendance, and I will ask officers to update you on their latest efforts to ensure that they address this problem.
Thank you. I've no other, Councillor Harvey, and is there anybody who wants to indicate on this particular item? Councillor Stone. Okay, and then I'll move on. So, Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. Leader, we're 4 weeks into quarter 2 of the financial year. So, based on my experience of the speed with which officers turn around a view of the outturn of the previous quarter, I'm expecting that you will have had sight of the outturn for quarter 1 for at least 2 weeks. I'm wondering whether, seeing as this council will not meet again until October, when quarter 2 will have concluded, whether you would like to share with us whether the Children's Directorate is forecasting to come on in on budget this year as at quarter 1.
Thank you. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to ask the leader about the Household Support Fund. First of all, I welcome the fact that 4,700 children and young people in Herefordshire will be having school meal vouchers during the summer holidays. This will be an enormous help and carries on the policy of the previous administration. But I'd like to know whether the Council is going to make any representations to the new government about the extension of the Household Support Fund, which is such a help, has been such a help to many families on low incomes in Herefordshire. The fund was extended by the previous Chancellor in March, but only for 6 months, and I hope very much that the new Chancellor in the budget will extend it further, because we really do need this extra funding for a lot of very vulnerable children and families in Herefordshire. And I'd like to know your views on it, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Going back to Councillor Harvey's question, it is the intention for the department, the Directorate, to balance the children's budget successfully. The quarter 1 reporting will be in the Cabinet meeting on the 26th of September. There's lots of movement in the finances with children's services, as you would always expect, and we're trying to get as clear a picture as we can, and we look forward to bringing that forward to Cabinet on the 26th of September, so everyone can see how well we're doing to keep to those budgets. And
so
with
that's
regard
a
to,
no then?
well, it's a changing picture, Councillor Harvey, and it'll change from one day to the next. What we want to do is get as an accurate a picture as possible and report on that as and when we're timetabled in to do so, and we will do so.
Quarter 1 outturn is a matter of fact.
Well, we will report on that, Councillor
Can-
Harvey, as
thank-
and when we do, as always.
Okay, move on to Councillor Stone.
And then with regard to the Household Support Fund, yes, you remember we had a really good debate about this at the budget meeting in February, and everybody's absolutely clear as to how important it is. And yes, we will be writing to the government to make sure that we're clear on, we make clear that this council's view that it's a really important fund that we would love to see continue.
Thank you. Item 2 here is the all-age autism strategy. Are there any questions on that? Yes, Councillor Fagan. Any other questions on this item? Just Councillor Fagan then. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. It says in your report that in addition to the ICS, which is the Integrated Care System-wide governance, there will be additional oversight within Herefordshire. We know that there are significant waiting lists for children with autism, mental health and speech and language issues, alongside other special educational needs. And in many instances, it can be a year before a child has their first meeting and then up to 75 weeks before assessment. A year is a long time in a child's development. These delays are causing unbearable stress and misery for children and families in the county, with a knock-on consequence for the council's social care delivery. Are we exerting enough pressure on our health partners to fully recognise and deal with these issues? And if not, what is the plan to exert more pressure? Thank you.
Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. Yes, you've highlighted a really important issue, and that's always a good question. Are we liaising with our partners as effectively as possible to ensure that everyone is delivering and providing those services that everybody needs? I think we can always do more, but we will continue to do so. And I know it's an issue that's very close to Councillor Gandhi's heart, and she will be doggedly determined in ensuring that our partners are doing everything they can to help all of our children and adults who need that support. But thank you for raising it, and I think it would be really poignant to at the next Health and Wellbeing Board if we can make the point that that issue was raised.
Councillor James, did you want just a quick one then?
Yeah, it's to endorse what Councillor Fagan has actually said, and you know, it's. I don't think we give this the priority it should have. There is an enormous problem that it's a national problem of using the assessment to hold back in providing what is necessary for the children with especially severe autism and medium scale on the scale of autism is costing this country enormous sums of money, and the repercussions long term are enormous. And you know, the sooner government realise that resources have to be put into this, because there's a legacy from a failure to deal with this subject that we will all have to bear for generations to come.
Thank you. Did you want to come back?
Yes, Councillor Gandhi would like to speak, if that's all right, to add to my answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add the fact that to assure members that when we brought this particular strategy to the Health and Wellbeing Board, we actually invited somebody who of a lived experience, who herself was on the autistic spectrum, as was her husband, as was her son. So we were given a sort of first-hand knowledge of what it's like to live with autism and the struggles that people have to actually get an assessment. And you're absolutely right. Alongside that, there are a number of different committees that I'm involved in where across the country it is recognised that this and along with another a significant number of other assessments for various mental health issues, the waiting lists are far, far too long, and we are putting pressure on both the government and more locally on the ICB to try to bring this waiting lists down.
Thank you. I'm moving on now to the all ages carers strategy. Any questions on this item? Councillor Simmons and Councillor Crockett. Just those two. Very well. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. As stated at Cabinet, I welcome the new strategy, and I'm very pleased to see that it has been co-produced, enabling it to be truly reflective of the needs as expressed by carers. I also welcome that it's presented as an all-ages strategy, as I'd said previously, to acknowledge that carers can often be young people. My question is, how will we ensure that our commissioning, and that's where the issue is, enables the right support for those third sector organisations, which are vital, particularly to our young carers?
Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, like Councillor Simmons, we welcomed the Cabinet discussion last week, and acknowledgement of an all-ages carer strategy was noted. We have now taken that on board as a scrutiny committee for healthcare and wellbeing. We are in discussions with children's scrutiny as well, and we will be taking that to a further scrutiny meeting so that we can explore what's being done. And we need to keep sight of the delivery plan and make sure everything is going as it should do. But welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader, did you want to reply?
Yep, absolutely. Well, first of all, making sure, if we go to Councillor Simmons' point, making sure that we have the right commissioning and the right commissioning process. First of all, you've got to have a strategy, and you've got those 6 priorities there, and that strategy, any commissioning process has to have that strategy right at the forefront. And if you just go through the 6 points of the strategy, every commissioned service has to have those 6 priorities running through them like a golden thread. And it's a very important point that Councillor Crockett says. It would be very interesting, absolutely important, that when we scrutinise this matter and this commissioning, that's one of the scrutiny questions that must be there, is how are we using this strategy to shape the commissioning? And of course, what will be absolutely essential as well is that when we commission these services, we have to co-produce them, and with the Care Partnership Board, then we will be consulting people with lived experiences so they can be a part of this and make sure we're on the right track. But that's the value of the strategy, to make sure that it's there as a blueprint to make sure that the commissioning we have is as effective as possible. So I think I've answered both questions.
Yep. Item 4 is the Holiday Activity and Food Programme Free School Meals. We've already had one question on that. Okay, I'm moving on from that on to the next item, which is the new road, is the local transport plan new objectives. I've got Councillor Stark. Anybody else? And anybody else? Okay, just those 2. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to read out the phrase in the actual leader's report that I want to refer to. For example, investment in transport is required when planning for new housing development and land use, and the location and design of these will have an impact on travel patterns and the new infrastructure needed to support them. Well, I can tell you, Chair, that is not the experience in Ross. In Ross, we've had quite a big development on the eastern side of the town, and yet our bus services have declined. In fact, I went for a bus the other day to try and get through to Hereford, and it never turned up. We don't even have a dedicated bus service between Ross and Hereford. What we have is Ross as an intermediate stop on a bus service from Gloucester to Hereford. I really do feel that these statements that are made are just not backed up by any proof that it actually happens in practice. We get this housing development, but we don't get commensurate bus service improvements that we need. And Ross itself doesn't have a train station, and without a decent bus network from Ross across the county, we end up forcing people onto the roads. So I really do want to see from the leader some evidence that that actual ambition will actually be brought into practice, and that's my question, Leader. Thank you.
Councillor Woodall.
Thank you. My question sort of covers the local transport plan and a bit into the new road strategy. So does delivering the LTP or the new road strategy this year do anything to relieve traffic congestion in the known bottlenecks in the city this year? And if not, when will it?
Thank you. Leader?
Thank you. First of all, in respect to Councillor Stark's question, we have to have a strategy in place, a local transport plan. But one of the challenges we have is an appropriate bus service, and I hear your pain with regard to Ross, and there has to be a joined up approach to that moving forward when we have development. And I'd be very happy to have a detailed discussion with Councillor Stark and Councillor Price to address some of those strategic issues that you feel that Ross is suffering from. And Councillor Woodall, about the congestion in the city at the current moment. Well, there's a good question, and it is blighting not only transport, businesses, people who live in the city, people who want to get around the city. It's a real problem. And we're striving as fast as we can to address that problem with a strategic approach to having the right infrastructure in Hereford City and in Herefordshire. And all I would say is I'm as frustrated as he surely is about the fact that we have congestion in the city. There was a plan to address that congestion, but it was delayed and cancelled. But now we've got to get back on track, because that's one of the main issues that we have to address for Hereford and Herefordshire. And I'm just really sorry that it was cancelled and delayed, because those decisions of the past have had deep consequences for Hereford and the economic fortunes of Herefordshire. So that's why we need to press on. Something radical isn't going to change this year, but we have to get the right strategy forward, because otherwise we're just going to have this problem go on year after year after year, and we can't have that.
Okay. Moving on now to item 6, which is the new road strategy for Herefordshire. Have I got any questions for the Chair? Councillor Simmons? Anybody else on this item? Councillor Oliver? Anyone else? Sorry, was that somebody? Councillor Harvey, sorry, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Woodall's too tall. Very well, those are the 3 speakers I have. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. Although before my time, the reason that the Independent and Green Coalition cancelled the work on the bypass was because we could see no funding stream that would support that in short order. Whilst the government's ambitions and investment for infrastructure is unclear at this stage, what is the plan B for funding of the bypass and timescales for its delivery if that money is not forthcoming from DFT?
Then Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I welcome the strategy for the bypass, but this is going to be 7 years, I gather, before we actually have a bypass, even if with a fair wind at 90 miles an hour behind us. This congestion in Hereford is getting worse. How are we going to manage throughout this 7 years with no other ways of getting traffic out of Hereford?
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Could the leader confirm when he is expecting to be able to have satisfied the Department for Transport's concerns that they've raised as regards the road projects going against national roads policy? And will he confirm that spending of Herefordshire people's money on progressing his road ambitions will be put on hold until those national policy concerns have been satisfied to the have been resolved to the satisfaction of the Department for Transport?
Leader.
Thank you. With regard to Councillor Simmons' point, with the Southern Link Road, we had LEP funding. And when it was the road was cancelled, the money was diverted elsewhere. So the reason for cancelling the Southern Link Road, I don't think was because there was a lack of funding. There was the funding there, and it was redistributed as a result of the cancellation. We will be the last government, provided a local transport fund for us, and so we are currently making sure that that money is still available for us. And as soon as we've got a clarification on that, we will let people know. But if it's a question of funding, what this government is really clear about is that there's the need for housing delivery and growth. And so we will be asking the government to ensure that they can help us with those growth ambitions. Councillor Oliver, I wouldn't recommend anybody do 90 miles an hour. But even if that's the wind behind us, we have to be realistic about what can be achieved in any time frame. But I'm very ambitious about the speed at which we should be ensuring that parts of the road infrastructure can be commenced as soon as possible. And with regard to spending, Councillor Harvey, with regard to spending council taxpayers' money, it's better to spend that money on road infrastructure than wasting it on not doing it. I will clarify the matter with regard to the Department for Transport's ambitions and their requirements of road infrastructure, but it has to be the best way forward to deliver the housing, the growth, and tackle the congestion that we have.
Thank you. Item 7 is the Marches Forward Partnership. I have Councillor Harcombe, and I've got Councillor Hitchener and Councillor Proctor. And is that everybody? So it's those three speakers. Councillor Harcombe first.
Thank you, Chair. When the Marches Forward Partnership was first mooted, it seemed like a fantastic opportunity to address the peculiarities that arise where communities cross national and county boundaries. For my ward, that could have ensured the entire of Richards Castle Road was service dressed rather than just the Shropshire side. And for a neighbouring ward, that could have resolved an issue where residents in an English village are charged more than their Welsh counterparts to be buried in their own village because the graveyard is owned and run by a Welsh council. The partnership was sold as a way to resolve these issues alongside more strategic priorities like infrastructure. I'm incredibly disappointed to see that the sole output of this partnership after the best part of a year is much talk but little action. Will the leader commit to ensuring that this partnership is not led astray by the siren calls of new devolution deals and instead focus on its original purpose? A cross-Welsh border devolution partnership cannot and will not work, in part because our Welsh counterparts are subject to the existing devolution deal, which reserves many powers to the Welsh Government in areas such as economy, housing and health. I would rather we refocused on the original purpose of this and we didn't go down the devolution deal for something that simply will not work.
Thank you. Councillor Hitchener.
Thank you, Chair. Just one or two comments in response to the cancellation of the bypass under my administration. First of all, I'd just make it clear there was never a full business case for building this SRR, and there still is not a full business case. That has yet to be proven. Secondly, we inherited a botched tendering process from the previous administration. And thirdly, the previous administration had 12 years in which to do anything. And it's, so to deal specifically now with the Marches Forward Partnership. So the Marches Forward Partnership is an excellent opportunity for Herefordshire, Powys, Monmouthshire and Shropshire to work together. The grouping may not fit with the new government's views on devolution. And in this context, I would ask that the letter referred to by the Chief Executive be circulated to all councillors, please. I welcome the opportunity for full engagement councillors on this significant issue. The government may say that given the willingness of the current administration to work with Shropshire on big ticket items such as a Western bypass, they will direct us to work with Shropshire on a devolution deal. Shropshire has a population size 66% larger than Herefordshire, so the risk is surely that Shropshire councillors and officers would control any devolved body with the consequent move of roles and influence from Hereford to Shrewsbury. Also, Shropshire is a council in a much more precarious financial position than our own, and not a welcome partner. Does the leader agree with me that this presents a risk? Will the leader assure members that he will not lead the council to a deal such as that with Worcestershire, which by all accounts was a disaster?
Okay. Councillor Proctor, I better remind everybody we're still on the Marches Forward Partnership. Councillor Proctor.
As a long campaigner for English devolution, I see real opportunities in the Deputy Prime Minister's letter, and I would ask the leader how he is going to ensure that our work on the Marches Forward Partnership does not prevent us from seeking the benefits of an English devolution deal.
Thank you. Leader.
Is anybody else going to answer these questions? No. They're all very good questions. Going back to Councillor Harkin's points, there are virtues about having the partnership. In my mind, they still exist. There's the opportunity to work better with neighbouring authorities, and there are many ways we can do that, not only to do the smaller but really important initiatives like working in collaboration for road improvement, cross-border issues in terms of transport, connectivity. So all of those issues, all of those opportunities will remain in a partnership. However, it has to now be seen in the context of the government's push for devolution. And so what we need to do is strike the right balance between not being in a position where we can't take advantage of partnerships, whilst at the same time being mindful of the direction of travel with regard to devolution. I think the difficulty is for this council, and this is certainly not a decision for me alone, it's the decision for this council to negotiate through these issues when the real detail is not apparent at this moment in time. And the letter from the officials that I only saw yesterday was saying that more information will be forthcoming in due course. That's a great government phrase, that, isn't it, in due course? But as soon as that information becomes more readily available, then we will be in a position to try to get the best deal for Herefordshire, whilst at the same time not lose out on the benefits that a partnership would bring to deal with all of those cross-border issues and the cry for the investment in the region.
Thank you. I've got two more people that want to speak on the forward march. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Councillor Hitchener, really, just do it. I hear your concerns about linking up with other authorities that may or may not be in a robust position. And that is something that we're going to have to think very carefully about and negotiate through. But, you know, I think the guiding principle is whatever decisions we take, whatever avenue we go down, whatever partnership we have, our primary function of this council is to do the best for Herefordshire, and we should never lose sight when we are considering these very important issues. And Councillor Proctor, I welcome your thoughts and views on English devolution. Perhaps you can help me guide me. If you've been an observer of this phenomenon for some time, I'd love to have a discussion with you. But as I say, it will be an ongoing discussion and a better informed discussion once information is forthcoming from government.
Very well. Councillor James and Councillor Kenyon, your questions on the Marches Forward partnership.
Thank you. I just think that there's an awful lot of misunderstanding of what the proposals are for devolution. The key is devolution. It's not that like the old days when we were merged with Worcestershire. That's not what this is about. This is about an existing councils. It's as if we suddenly made the LEP democratically accountable to this council and to whatever other council is involved in the LEP. It is important. It is important because those certain responsibilities are being devolved down to that body. Central government will do it, and we will have influence that we don't have now. Powers are not going to be taken away from this council or any other council. It's about giving powers nearer to us, to an organisation, a joint organisation, which would be nearer to ours and we would be involved in, albeit indirectly through nominees from this particular council. So we should welcome this to a certain extent, because we should have greater benefits from a proposal like this. And, you know, we need to move forward, not backwards. We're not going to be sort of likely, as someone who was heavily involved in the campaign against the merger of Herefordshire with Worcestershire, this doesn't change our position a jot. It means that we would have greater involvement in those services, other services that now are dictated to us by central government.
Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Chairman. Yesterday, I I had a nice trip down to Llanelli on the train, and the train was on time. It was fantastic coming through, and coming back up, I drove a vehicle back up. It was wonderful going through the heads of the valleys. Lots of roadworks going on, fantastic. Lots of infrastructure going on, fantastic. This Marches thing, I think, is a great opportunity. We have to see it. We have to be positive. We have to see it as an opportunity to work with our partners. They've got fantastic roads there. I know it's European money, but there's other money being put in since. Herefordshire, we seem to be the infrastructure terrible place. You get to Herefordshire and it all stops. So we need to look at that. And to perhaps quote the finest Prime Minister ever, "We may be small, but we are mighty." Love Actually.
Did you want to reply to any of that, or just agree?
Well, I thank Councillor James for his comments and his positivity with regard to devolution, and that's why we must look with interest on this vital issue to make sure that we do get the best for Herefordshire. And thank you, Councillor Kenyon, for quoting one of my favourite films. Thank you.
Right, moving on. Agenda item 8 under this is the Public Realm Service. Any particular questions on the service? There are no questions on the service. Can I move then on to the Public Realm Contract at 9? Any questions on the Public Realm Contract? I have nobody indicating. I'll move on to 10, the Wetlands Development and Phosphate Credit Scheme. Councillor Harvey, Councillor Simmons. Anybody else? Nobody else? Very well. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. May I first congratulate officers for the awards the Council has received in relation to the Wetlands project and more projects to come. This is the result of hard work done during the period of the independent-led administration and included work by Councillor Swinglehurst, who we chose to continue to chair the Nutrient Management Board. It is somewhat ironic that your minority Conservative administration is picking up awards for clearing up the mess which your administrations of the past caused in granting so many planning permissions to enable chicken farms to be built. Official data points to 75% of the phosphate issues in our rivers being caused by a failure of the planning system to safely address waste management. Would you as leader acknowledge that you and your predecessors contributed significantly to the problem with the grant of these planning permissions for so many chicken sheds, and that the work done during the period of the independent-led administration has produced an innovative approach to phosphate mitigation, which must be used to enable our indigenous building industry to survive whilst the crisis for our rivers remains unresolved?
Thank you. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. I would also like to pay tribute to the excellent work done by the officers and both administrations, including Councillor Swinglehurst, in the development of the phosphate credit scheme. It is a real shame that it has been required because of the damage that has occurred to the Wye from various sources, particularly intensive agriculture. We can see that there are developments and plans being pushed ahead with the spatial planning in relation to elements that could further contribute to damage to the Wye, and I just plead that that is carefully looked at through development of the plan. My question is, what is the plan for support of our local independent building sector, which often loses out to the bigger house builders within the phosphate credit scheme sort of logjam? And just clarification whether there is still a moratorium on housing as a result. Thank you.
And I've got Councillor Harcombe, and then I'll move to the leader. Councillor Harcombe.
Thank you, Chair. I recently met with colleagues and a number of house builders who expressed their concerns that whilst the phosphate credit scheme's welcome from the wetlands, when they try and bring forward private initiatives or they try and address the problem with new technology or new ideas, that it's a very slow progress through the system, and they feel they've been held back by that lack of ability to not take a risk but to embrace new initiatives as they come downstream. Can we commit? Could the leader commit to our council actually undertaking a review of best practice in relation to that, in terms of neighbouring councils who have actually embraced these schemes, and to see where we could add additional phosphate mitigation in via different methods?
Thank you. Leader?
Thank you. With regard to Councillor Harvey's talking about the excellent work that officers did to start the wetlands project, yes, absolutely excellent, and it's only right and fitting that they've won national awards to ensure that there's the recognition due to all of that hard work, innovation, and the uniqueness of the scheme. And that was done under the last administration, and they're to be congratulated for being the custodians of that process, absolutely. With regard to, how shall I phrase this? I think the point is, when planning applications are made for whatever application, they're done in the policy context of the time. And so, Councillor Harvey, you make it sound like a couple of Conservative councillors were dealing with the planning applications and making the decisions. Those decisions were made by the entire council's planning process. So that's a consequence of that process at that time. But the problem with phosphates is a long-term issue that has been building up over many, many years because of practices. And now we're in an enlightened age where we realise we have to address these issues. And we have strategies, we have mitigation programmes that are coming online through the efforts of the council. And we should be proud of those mitigation strategies and very proud of our staff who are making sure that these matters are being addressed. With regards to the moratorium and with regards to Councillor Hercombe's point about the small builders, businesses who may feel frustrated about the process, we have a phosphate mitigation strategy there, but we've got to make sure that that strategy is being applied correctly and give those builders the opportunity to be as innovative as possible, which is a point I made when I was in opposition as a group leader, to say that we can't be solely the solution. We have to look to others to help us provide those solutions. And I would just like to ask Councillor Swinglehurst, who works day and night on this issue, if she has any comments with regard to that.
Thank you, Leader. Whilst it's not day and night, it's certainly something that preoccupies me a great deal of my time, because it matters, and it matters for a number of reasons. Obviously, it matters because of the health of the rivers. Absolutely, critical. We all want to see our rivers healthy. But it also matters because I can see the devastating impact this has had on our local house building industry, and particularly the SME builders. It's unfair, and we really, the impact it's had has been quite catastrophic. So the council has a job to do there on two fronts, and I would echo your comments as to the previous administration and the work the officers did to find a solution. And I remember very early on sort of plodding about in a bunch of kind of fields to select sites and try to understand what this constructed integrated wetland was going to look like. It's really brilliant that it's being done and delivered, and there will be more to come, and there will be enough phosphate credits for SME builders to build and for people to have homes. We can only do so much. We also look to private mitigation schemes. We're very supportive of that, and we want to give good advice there. And we will continue to do all that we can to restore the water quality of our rivers.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on now to the acquisition of housing and land, 11. Are there any questions on this? I'm moving on then to 12, the Wye Valley Trust Investment Partner. And then moving on to 13, Digital Strategy. Councillor Proctor.
The leader is right to highlight the risk of cyber attacks and data breaches. Several councils have been subject to successful ransomware attacks, and the consequences can be very significant. There were no house sales were possible in Gloucester for 2 months. the payment of benefits may be held up. And in the case of Gloucester, their protections were extremely robust, but they still got in. What steps is he taking to ensure that we have business continuity plans in the event of a successful ransomware attack so that we can recover and continue to deliver services?
Any other questions on this item? Yes, Councillor Stark.
The Chief Executive has mentioned that there will be parallel improvements beyond the digital strategy in terms of transforming processes, perhaps people's way of working and everything else. Can the leader tell us when we're going to see those parallel improvements actually presented to Council? Thank you.
Is that the next item? No. Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Very well. No, I've got no other indications for this, so therefore I'll call on the leader.
Thank you. Firstly, Councillor Proctor's point, absolutely any large organisation that relies on technology will always be vulnerable. With regard to the specifics about how we would deal with those threats, there is a strategy in place, and I will just ensure that you get that information. And to any councillor who's interested in this matter, which I'm sure you all are, I will make sure that you have that strategy available. And just thinking of it in terms of all of those key services that Herefordshire Council delivers, these threats are real, serious, and could have serious consequences if we cannot deliver these services. So we will make sure that you're aware of the robust plans that are in place. And Councillor Stark, sorry, forgive me, indulge me. Could you just clarify the point you're wishing to make? My apologies.
Digital transformation is all very well, Leader, but often with digital transformation you have to actually amend your processes of handling queries as well. You have to look at staff training, staff culture, everything else to actually maximise the benefit of digital transformation. I know we've got an item workforce strategy which the Chair has pointed out, but I do think keeping them separate is not necessarily the best way forward. That's why I wanted to ask you this combined question as to when will Council get this overall sort of presentation of all the proposals involved in transformation, not just the digital side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that matter. I mean, when we came to doing the council plan, one of the things that was my decision to do was to make sure that transformation was embedded into the process of the council plan itself. And when we think about all the services that we deliver and all of the staff that we have delivering those services, we have to ensure that they've got the right technology to do the jobs that they need to do. So that's why it was critical that it's embedded in the council plan. And what we will be doing to highlight how that transformation is taking place is it will be also enshrined, as we have done so, in putting these processes into the delivery plan so that councillors can see how we're doing this transformation. And one of the key things that's changing more than anything is how we deliver our services in light of technology. That's why it's critical, and that's what is going to make us do better services in a way that is far more efficient. So it's key to what we're doing. That's why I wanted it in the council plan, and we need to demonstrate to members how that is actually taking effect, but that will be through the delivery plan monitoring process.
Thank you. I'll move on to item 14, which is the new workforce strategy. Any questions? Yeah, yes, Councillor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the fact that you recognise the challenges in developing this new workforce strategy, but is the leader aware that as a consequence of MERS, the current delegated grants and programmes management team has gone from a team of 8 to 2? Firstly, can he give me his assurance that this depletion will in no way impact our ability to manage current grants? And secondly, is he confident we will have capacity to deliver future funding across the county should new central government money become available? It would be a travesty when money is so precious for Herefordshire to miss out on vital inward investment because we lack the ability to manage funds. Finally, I'm pleased we will be advertising the new role of a community grants officer in the next few days, but can he also give me his assurance that this important new post won't end up being used to tackle the capacity issues caused by MERS. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this? Steph and Councillor, and I better remind you all, you're only limited to three comments. And then Councillor Woodall. Very well.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the new workforce strategy, similar to Councillor Driscoll, we've seen that the One Public Estate Office has effectively had a number of people lost through MERS. It is so vital to delivery of Section 106 and that joined up work with our health providers. Please can I have reassurance that this is in hand and that this won't be affected in terms of delivery of particularly with regard to Ledbury. Thank you.
Councillor Harcombe.
Thank you, Chair. The world and the workplace has moved on since COVID. There's a place for home working and there's a place for office-based working. And one of the last points that Councillor Matthews was making was that the council needed to review its home working strategy to ensure it was still delivering for the council. And as part of this workforce strategy, can we have a look at that to make sure that actually we do have the right guidance in place and there are the right safeguards in place to make sure that everything is delivering as it should?
Is it Councillor Woodall?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Fagan.
Yes, I just want to know, does the strategy recognise the impact of available housing and affordable accommodation on attracting and retaining staff?
And then finally, Councillor Fagan.
Thank you. The Children's Scrutiny Committee did look at the children's workforce strategy and were very pleased to see the developments that had been made regarding that. And one of the key things that came out of that is the moving from agency staff to permanent staff, but also the development of relational working within the council. And if could we please just have some affirmation that relational working will underpin all of the elements of the workforce strategy, and also the staff survey that is currently being undertaken, if there are issues within the staff survey that emerge that need to be dealt with through the strategy, that the strategy will actually accommodate those issues. Thank you.
Leader.
Thank you. A flurry of activity there. Right. Okay. Going back to the points about MERS and how that has affected teams. Councillor O'Driscoll, thank you for raising the point with regard to that team in general, but that team specifically, but in general, we must accept that MERS has had consequences in terms of staff moving on and us losing that expertise and that all of that knowledge that has been built up over the years. But as an organisation that is robust, we must move on and we must make sure that we have the resources that are allocated to making those services maintain the level of service that everybody would expect. That particular team you're talking about is being strengthened, and I will make sure you get details about that, so you're assured that despite MERS, that team will be able to function in the way that it does, because obviously we must maximise all grant funding opportunities. So I hear the plea, but I will give you some assurance about that and how we're dealing with that particular issue. It's great news about the funding officer, and we want to make that post a key function of the council, so we will be progressing that, and once we're in a position to update everyone on that matter, we will indeed. But thank you for raising that assurance. And of course, Councillor Simmons, you pointed to another department that has been affected by MERS, and again, we must make every effort to ensure that it's business as usual, even though the people have lost the organisation that have contributed extremely well to the running of this council. Councillor Hercombe, thank you for reminding me about the point that Councillor Matthews would have made had he have been in the room. And it's always important to make sure that the staff have the right conditions, the right working environment, so that they can perform all of the duties they do. And that's the point about having a workforce strategy. Absolutely, we've got to make sure that we're getting the best out of our staff and they're having the best working experience they can to deliver all of the things that they do. Councillor Woodall, your point about housing provision that is fundamental to when people come to live and work in this area. And, you know, when I think about our housing strategy and our need for housing, we're not just trying to provide housing for people who need housing in this county, we're trying to provide housing for people who want to move to Herefordshire, to start a career, to start delivering those services for Herefordshire Council, for example. And if they haven't got good quality housing for them to move into, then we're not going to attract that workforce coming in. But with regard to the specific policy to address that in our recruitment, I will get clarification on that point. With regard to the council survey, Councillor Fagan, I'm as eager as I'm sure everyone is to know what the outcome of that staff survey is, because we must have staff that are feeling like they can contribute in that staff survey to tell us all of the issues, the good, the bad, the challenging bits. And I really look forward to seeing how that staff survey can inform the workforce strategy. Councillor Stoddard, can you just remind me when we're expecting the results of the survey to be published?
I can't give you the detail of the publication, but I think it closed on the 16th of July, so we're putting the report together, I'd imagine, through the month of August.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 15 is the parish summit held on the 9th of July. Any questions relating to that? Yes? Sorry, yeah, Councillor Hitchener and yes, and Councillor Elgin as well. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Hitchener first.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the continued engagement with parishes through the Parish Summit, and what an excellent event it was. There were some failings, I think, in communication. I myself found the event through the Chief Executive's newsletter, and I do encourage everybody to read that excellent publication. The concept was... It is an excellent... The concept was started by the leader in 2018, I believe, continued in the last administration through Talk Parish and all the difficulties that we had with the remote meeting with COVID, and is now being continued by the leader, so I do fully support it. At the meeting, the review of the Charter, which articulates aspects of the relationship between Parish Council and the County Council, was broadly welcomed. Can the leader assure Council that those engaged in that consultation, who may be asked to play a role in the Charter going forward, will themselves be properly scrutinised, audited and made accountable?
Councillor Engel.
Well, I though I wasn't there because I failed to read the relevant newsletter, alas, and I'm very sorry. But on the plan to draw up the Charter, can I just echo Councillor Hitchener's remarks? And can you give a public promise that this Charter will be a genuine collaboration with the actual parish councils and not the traditional take it or leave it approach that normally applies in this country when a larger public body gets together with a smaller public body, whatever the high-minded and good intentions?
Leader?
Thank you. Well, I really thought I was a trailblazer and in 2018 bringing up this Parish Council Summit, but apparently I was reminded yesterday, I think it was, that there was actually a parish summit that was held much earlier in the days of Councillor Johnson and Alistair Neil. So I like to think I was being unique, but apparently it was done. But I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, I reinvented the wheel, and I reinvented the wheel in a time that it was much easier to have public meetings. And unfortunately, the last administration had to deal with all of the issues that COVID brought, so that's what brought it online. But it was really refreshing to be able to bring it back to a public forum, and I think it was a successful meeting. And one of the reasons I think it was successful is because we gave those present the opportunity right at the start, after the introduction, to feedback instantly and have the floor with regard to all the issues that they had. There is, with regard to the charter itself, there is a working group that was already set up to discuss the delivery of the charter, and I don't wish to trump or override the work that they're already doing. But the position I presented at the meeting on the summit was, you give us your ideas, I'll give you my ideas about what I think should be in it, and let's co-produce that document. The last thing I think councils want is a document that's been created in these four walls that then goes to them and says, this is it, what do you think? I would much prefer the co-production model. And so what I undertake to do is to write to all parish councils and say, this is what I think should be in it, what do you think should be in it? And once we've got all of that feedback, then we can help co-produce that charter document, because the whole premise of a charter document is that it's an agreement between councils rather than one council telling the other councils what they think it should be. And so that's my sincere wish that we create that document together. I've already been talking to parish clerks as well, who are really key to the running of parish councils, so I really want to welcome them, their input. And the next meeting is on the 8th of October. The reason it's that date, because I wanted to do the next meeting before the clocks go back. And forgive me, I haven't been able to find the email, but maybe I'm imagining this, but I thought I emailed all ward councillors to say that the parish council event was on, so I'm going to have to check my email. But if I can just make a plea to everyone that it's the 8th of October, the next one, everyone's welcome. That's because the relationship between Herefordshire Council and our council partners is critical. Also, there are councillors in this room that are also parish councillors or city councillors or town councillors. And my ambition really through this process is to ensure that all councils feel equal in being consulted and working with one another, because that's such an important resource, having all of these councils and all of these councillors there to make sure that we deliver the best for Herefordshire. I don't think, Councillor Hitchener, that will require audit and scrutiny to the level that we would if we were dealing with, say, another strategy. But I think what scrutiny may wish to do is, if we have a charter agreement document and we have this parish council and other councils process, we can always evaluate the effectiveness of that moving forward.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, we've got that date in our diaries now, 8th of October. Very well, that concludes those items that we've gone through. The appendices 2 and 3 are there for you to note. Councillor Hitchener.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. This perhaps is a result of my legal background of reading the schedules. But I do note that in Schedule 3, Councillor Mason is referred to as Cabinet Support. Maybe this is a mistake. I had understood that he had temporarily stood down from the role. Could the Leader please confirm the status and confirm that he is not being paid a responsibility allowance and explain who is taking on responsibility for his areas? Thank you.
Leader?
There's been no grounds to change the current situation, and I won't comment further on what is actually a personal matter. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's no other questions on that. Can I then go to the final act of saying thank you all to members of the public and to all of you for your attendance at today's meeting. The next scheduled meeting will be on the Friday the 11th of October. That's after the parish summit. It will be at 10 o'clock. It'll be at 10 o'clock. I now declare the meeting closed and